Chosen one, your peace doesn't need to be seen to be complete. Chosen one, have you ever noticed how a stone thrown into a young, untouched lake can send ripples across the water for what seems like forever? Yet the very same stone, thrown into that same lake many years later, creates only a small circle before disappearing almost instantly. What changed? Not the stone, the lake. Have you ever wondered why the things that once shook you to your core now seem to touch you only as lightly as a stone falling into water that has long since learned the language of waves? If that sounds familiar, stay with me for a little while. There is something waiting for you today, something about the quietness that has slowly taken root within you, something whose value you may not have fully recognized yet. In the book of Psalms, there is a verse believers often return to when searching for a kind of strength that does not come from striving, but from stillness. Be still and know, not. Fight harder, not. Prove yourself. Simply be still. Chosen one, picture a lake at midnight, not a single ripple. Not because no wind has passed over it during the day, but because after countless seasons, the lake has learned not to hold on to every wind that blows through. Perhaps peace is not something you create so others can admire it. Perhaps it is something you quietly keep for yourself, without an audience, without applause, without anyone else's approval to make it real. Chosen one, this message is not about what may or may not be happening behind the closed doors of the person who betrayed you. No one truly knows those things except them. What I want to sit with you today is something much closer, the lake within you, and how it is slowly remembering its own stillness, regardless of what is happening on the other shore. The first stone. Let's begin where everything seemed to fall apart. Chosen one, do you remember exactly where you were when you discovered the truth? Maybe it was a message that appeared on a lock screen. Maybe it was an innocent remark from someone who didn't realize what they had revealed. Or maybe it was simply a silence that lasted just a little too long, long enough for you to begin asking questions you never wanted to ask. In that moment, something inside you broke, not as a figure of speech, in a very real physical way. Your chest tightened, your hands turned cold. The room itself, though nothing had changed, suddenly looked different, as if the light had quietly changed color. What makes betrayal hurt so deeply is not merely what another person did, it is that it came from the one you had invited closest to your heart. The one for whom you lowered every wall. The one you trusted enough to let inside. In the Psalms, there is another passage that countless people have read and quietly whispered to themselves because it felt as though it had been written for their own hearts. If an enemy were insulting me, I could endure it. But it is you, a close friend, one with whom I once shared the sweetest fellowship. This is not the cry of weakness. It is one of the most honest descriptions of human heartbreak ever written, penned by a man many believers still look to as a model of deep faith. Chosen one, perhaps what hurt you most was not what they did. Perhaps it was how completely you trusted them. Now every memory feels uncertain. You are no longer grieving only the betrayal. You are grieving the collapse of everything you once believed was real. Perhaps you've gone back through old photos on your phone, a beach vacation, an anniversary dinner, a moment you once believed was one of the happiest days of your life. And now you stare at those same smiles, wondering what was really happening behind them. You scroll slowly, almost searching for a crack that somehow escaped your notice back then. Maybe you've reread that final conversation dozens of times, looking for the sign you missed, the sentence you should have understood differently, the moment that, if only you had responded another way, might have changed everything. This is one of the mind's most natural responses. Your heart longs for an explanation, because even a painful answer often feels easier than believing everything simply fell apart without any reason you can understand. Chosen one, I am not here to tell you that trusting was your mistake. Trust is never a mistake. Trust is one of the purest expressions of love, and the fact that someone abused it does not make your willingness to give it foolish. Perhaps you do not need to understand every reason they walked away before you can begin learning how to stand again. Remember something else. The days that followed. Life did not stop simply because your heart had broken. You still had to go to work. You still answered messages from co-workers. You still smiled politely when people asked how you were doing, all while something inside you continued collapsing in complete silence. Perhaps you locked yourself inside the restroom at work just to have a few minutes alone before washing your face and walking back out as though nothing had happened. Perhaps you drove home by taking the long way, simply because you weren't ready to walk back into the house where every memory still waited for you. This is a kind of suffering people rarely talk about. The pain of continuing the performance while your heart is quietly falling apart. No one teaches you how to do that. You simply do it, because life never pauses long enough to wait for your healing. Chosen one, if this is where you are today, still working, still smiling, still living what appears to be an ordinary life while carrying extraordinary pain inside, please know this. That is not pretending. That is one of the quietest forms of courage a human being can possess. And very few people ever notice it. Sleepless nights were never theirs, they were yours. Chosen one, let me gently take you somewhere you may not want to return. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. You're lying awake, staring at the ceiling. The whole house is silent except for the ticking of the clock and the uneven rhythm of your own breathing, as though even your lungs are struggling to remain calm. Your phone is still open to that old conversation. You know you shouldn't read it again. You've promised yourself that countless times, yet your thumb scrolls upward anyway, stopping on messages from months ago, back when everything seemed normal, before you knew what was really happening behind those words. You set the phone down. You close your eyes. Sleep never comes. Chosen one, I'm not going to rush in and comfort you here. This pain deserves to be called by its true name. In the Psalms, there is a verse that countless believers have whispered through nights, exactly like this. I am worn out from my groaning. All night long I flood my bed with weeping and drench my couch with tears. This is not poetic exaggeration. It is the honest testimony of human sorrow, a sorrow that people have carried through countless generations, perhaps even the very sorrow you are carrying tonight. Chosen one, there is something difficult I want you to look at. While you lie here, wide awake at 3 in the morning, the person who betrayed you may very well be sleeping peacefully, not because they are stronger than you, not because they were right, but simply because, at this moment, they have not paid for what happened with sleepless nights the way you have. I won't tell you that's fair, because it isn't. And I won't promise you that one day they will lie awake exactly as you are now, paying the same emotional price. I don't know whether that day will ever come. Pretending otherwise would not be honest. What I do know is this: these nights are real. Your exhaustion is real. Your tears are real. You do not have to pretend they hurt less than they do simply to convince yourself, or anyone else, that you've healed faster than you truly have. Chosen one, stay here with me for just another moment. Some nights you aren't lying awake because you're thinking about them. You're lying awake because you're thinking about yourself, about the versions of your life that might have existed. the version where you never trusted the wrong person, the version where you noticed the warning signs sooner, the version where everything turned out differently. You replay those alternate stories over and over again, even though you already know they lead nowhere. This is how the mind tries to regain a sense of control after living through something that left it completely powerless. There are nights when you no longer cry because of what they did. You cry because you're tired. Tired of being strong all day, tired of pretending you're fine whenever someone asks how you're doing, tired because your body has carried tension for so long that it no longer knows where to release it, except during these lonely hours when no one else is watching. Chosen one, I did not write these words to pull you deeper into your pain. I wrote them so you would know that if this is your reality, you are not alone, even though 3 in the morning always has a way of making loneliness feel absolute. You don't need to know whether they regret it. Chosen one, let me ask you a question you may never have asked yourself honestly. Why do we feel that the person who hurt us must suffer before life feels fair again? This isn't a question meant to judge you. It is one of the most human instincts we have. When someone takes something precious from us without seeming to pay a price, every part of us longs to see balance restored. Chosen one, have you noticed how much time you've spent searching for that balance? Checking their social media, looking for signs that they aren't doing well, comparing their new life with yours, searching for proof that they are hurting just as much as you are. This is one of the quietest traps grief can set, because it makes you feel as though you're moving forward, when in reality you're still tied to the relationship that ended. Only now the rope has a different name. It is no longer attachment, it is surveillance. Picture a woman. 3 months after discovering the betrayal, she still opens her former partner's social media every single night before going to bed. She doesn't even decide to do it anymore. It has simply become part of her evening routine. Brush her teeth, pick up her phone, type his name, see what's new. Whenever she sees him smiling in another photograph, anger rises inside her. Whenever there is nothing new, she feels an emptiness that is just as exhausting, as though she has been waiting for a sign that never arrives. One night, after closing the app, she realizes something. She has spent 3 months watching the life of the man who walked away, while her own life has barely moved. Not because she wasn't trying, but because every evening, a small part of her mind kept returning to the place where she had been wounded. That night, she deleted the app from her phone, not because she had stopped hurting, but because she finally understood something. She did not need more information in order to heal. She needed time, and she needed distance, so the lake within her could finally become still. In Paul's letter to the Romans, believers often return to these words as they learn to release the burden of personal revenge. Do not take revenge. Many people read those words not as a guarantee that justice will arrive exactly when they hope, but as an invitation to put down the exhausting responsibility of judging another person's life. Chosen one, this isn't advice to pretend everything is okay, nor is it an invitation to suppress your emotions. It is an invitation to ask yourself a different question. Instead of asking, how can they finally pay for what they did? Ask, how can I stop paying for it a second time by allowing my mind to revolve around them? Imagine this. Suppose you knew with absolute certainty that they were perfectly happy. No regret, no sleepless nights, no guilt whatsoever. Would knowing that change your healing? Would it make your nights any easier? Perhaps not. And if that is true, then perhaps continuing to search for the answer has only been stealing time that could have been spent caring for your own heart. You do not need to know whether they regret what they did, because your peace was never meant to depend on their regret in order to become complete. Chosen one, let those words settle for a moment. Perhaps they are the hardest truth in today's journey, not because they are difficult to understand, but because they ask you to release something your heart has been holding on to for a very long time, the belief that justice must arrive before peace is allowed to exist. There is an important difference between longing for justice and making justice the condition for your healing. Wanting justice is natural. You have every right to believe that what happened was wrong. You have every right to hope that wrongdoing does not pass through this world without consequence. But the moment you tell yourself, "I will only be at peace once they finally pay for what they did," you unknowingly hand them another kind of power, the power to determine when you are finally allowed to feel free. This is why so many people appear to have moved on. They have a new job, a new relationship, a new routine. Yet part of them never truly left the moment they were betrayed, because somewhere deep inside they are still waiting for something from the person who walked away before giving themselves permission to be completely free. Nehemiah and the wall that never stopped rising. Chosen one, let me tell you about a man who faced a very different kind of attack, yet whose story speaks directly to what you may need today. Nehemiah was called to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem after they had lain in ruins for years. The moment the work began to make progress, opposition appeared. Those who did not want to see him succeed mocked him. They threatened him. Again and again, they invited him to leave the wall and come talk with them. But the invitation was never sincere. It was a trap. Their hope was simple. If they could not destroy the work, perhaps they could distract the builder. Nehemiah never came down. Not once. Not twice. Every time they called for him, his answer remained almost exactly the same. "I am carrying on a great work and cannot come down." Chosen one, think about that for a moment. He did not waste his energy arguing. He did not feel compelled to prove he was right. He did not answer every insult with another insult. He simply kept building. That is the lesson I hope you carry with you, not only through the betrayal you've endured, but through every season of life when you will be tempted to step away from your own work simply to respond to someone else's actions. Think about your own wall. Perhaps it is the career you are rebuilding from the ground up. Perhaps it is the new relationships you are learning to nurture with care. Perhaps it is nothing more and nothing less than the quiet peace you are trying to protect inside your own heart. Every time you stop to see whether they have noticed how well you're doing, every time you spend your emotional energy hoping they'll finally regret losing you, you step down from your own wall. Chosen one, you do not have to leave your wall to prove anything to anyone. Picture a man a few weeks after a painful breakup. He finally enrolls in a course he has postponed for years. One evening, a mutual friend sends him a message. "Did you hear who she's dating now?" He stares at the screen for a long time. His thumb hovers above the keyboard. He could reply. He could ask questions. He could spend the rest of the evening chasing details about someone else's life. Instead, he types only one sentence. "I don't know, and I don't need to anymore." He puts his phone down. Then he returns to the textbook lying open on his desk. No one applauds. No one even knows it happened. Yet that small decision, repeated over and over in different forms, is exactly how walls are rebuilt. Chosen one, there is another detail in Nehemiah's story that deserves your attention. Those invitations to come down and talk were not made only once. They came again and again. Sometimes disguised as threats, sometimes sounding almost peaceful. His enemies did not stop after the first refusal. They simply changed their approach. Life works much the same way. The temptation to step down, to check, to respond, to explain yourself, to prove something, rarely disappears after one victory. It returns, perhaps through an unexpected memory, a mutual friend mentioning their name, a familiar song playing when you least expect it. The important thing is not that temptation never returns. The important thing is that every time it does, you already know your answer. Just like Nehemiah's. Simple, steady, without lengthy explanations. I am carrying on a great work, and I cannot come down. Chosen one, if you are quietly rebuilding something in your own life right now, whether anyone notices or not, whether anyone believes in you or not, perhaps leave a simple reminder for yourself today. Not because strangers need to know your story, but because sometimes a small declaration helps us remember that we are still building, and perhaps someone else who is rebuilding their own life will realize they are not standing among the ruins alone. The peace is not a punishment, it is freedom. Chosen one, this is the moment I hope you'll truly pause and let these words settle slowly into your heart. How much time have you spent imagining the day they finally realize what they lost? How many stories have you written in your mind where they see you happy, successful, at peace, only to be overwhelmed with regret for letting you go? I understand why those stories are so comforting. They give you a sense of control. They make your suffering feel as though it is leading somewhere, as though justice is waiting just around the corner. But perhaps the deepest truth is this: your peace was never meant to be someone else's punishment. Imagine someone who has spent months living inside those imagined conversations and victories. Then one ordinary day, they suddenly realize something. They haven't wondered whether the other person regrets anything. Not because they forced themselves to stop thinking about it, but because, little by little, life quietly filled their mind with other things. A new job that is beginning to flourish. A peaceful morning with a cup of coffee. A conversation with a friend who genuinely cares. They cannot remember the exact moment the change happened. They only realize that they haven't checked the betrayer's social media in weeks, maybe even months. There are no fireworks, no dramatic celebration, no audience applauding their progress, only a quiet sense of relief, like finally setting down a weight you've carried for so long that you forgot how much your shoulders once hurt. Picture that moment as clearly as you can. Perhaps it happens on an ordinary morning, nothing remarkable. You make yourself a cup of coffee. You sit beside the window. You look outside. Then suddenly, you realize you haven't thought about them since yesterday, maybe even for several days, not because you were trying to forget, but because your heart has found other things worthy of its attention. You sit there with your coffee. A small smile appears without you even noticing, not because you won some invisible competition against them, but because you finally understand. You have stepped out from beneath the shadow of what happened. Chosen one, your peace is not someone else's punishment. It is the evidence that you no longer need them in order to feel whole. You are not forgiving because they deserve forgiveness. You are not letting go because they apologized enough. You are choosing freedom, regardless of what they do next. There is another distinction worth understanding. Many people confuse forgiveness with reconciliation. They are not the same. Forgiveness, as many believers understand it, is a decision you make for your own heart. It is releasing your right to carry resentment for the rest of your life. Reconciliation is something entirely different. It requires the participation of both people. And it is not always possible. Nor is it always wise or even safe. You can forgive without speaking to them again. You can forgive without them ever knowing. You can forgive even if they never apologize. Because forgiveness, at its deepest level, is not a gift you give to them. It is a door you open for yourself. So you can finally walk out of the room where your pain has kept you waiting. A lake doesn't need an audience to be still. Chosen one, what truly changes when someone no longer feels the need to prove they've healed? This is an important question, because another trap often waits just beyond the desire for revenge, the desire to display your peace, not for yourself, but as a quiet message to the one who hurt you. Look at me now. I'm doing better than you ever imagined. Chosen one, be honest with yourself for a moment. Have you ever posted a carefully chosen photo, not because you genuinely wanted to share the moment, but because somewhere inside you hoped they might see it? There is no shame in admitting that. It is deeply human. But it is also a sign that, although you may no longer wish them harm, part of your life is still being lived beneath their imagined gaze. In his first letter, Peter describes a different kind of beauty. Not the kind that seeks attention, but the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit. Many believers have found comfort in those words because they remind us that some things remain beautiful precisely because they do not depend upon being noticed. Chosen one, imagine someone who spent months posting pictures of a new life after heartbreak. Happier than ever, smiling, traveling, thriving. Then one day, they quietly stopped. Not because life became worse, not because healing had failed, but because they realized something. They no longer needed anyone to witness their happiness in order for it to be real. They were still living well. It simply was no longer a performance. That is a subtle difference. Yet it changes everything. Living well in order to heal yourself, and living well in order to prove something to someone else, may look identical from the outside. Inside, however, they feel completely different. One brings relief. The other, even though it appears positive, is simply another way of allowing the past to occupy space within your heart. Chosen one, your lake does not need anyone to witness its stillness, to know that it has truly become calm. Think about this another way. There is a remarkable freedom in doing something simply because it nourishes your own soul. You might begin a new hobby, not to post about it, simply because you've always wanted to try. You might spend an evening reading a book, without taking a picture of the cover. You might go for a quiet walk alone, enjoying the air, the sunlight, the silence, without feeling the need to turn it into proof that you're living your best life. When you begin doing these things only for yourself, something quietly changes. Life stops feeling like a stage, and slowly becomes what it was always meant to be. Life itself, lived gently, without an audience. Chosen one, perhaps this is one of the clearest signs that the waters inside you are finally becoming still. Not that you never think about them again. That may take far longer than you expect, but that the things you choose to do each day, you now do because they matter to you. Not because somewhere, in your imagination, someone else might be watching. Chosen one, as these words begin to draw to a close, I invite you to slow down with me, the way a lake slowly settles after a long day of wind and relentless sun. Picture it beneath the moon at midnight. Not a single ripple. The water reflects the moon so perfectly that, unless you look closely, they almost become one. There is no rush to arrive at this kind of stillness. It asks only for time, and for permission. Permission to let yesterday's waves settle at their own pace, without forcing them to disappear before they are ready. Chosen one, I don't need to repeat everything you've walked through today for you to realize how far you've already come. You have felt that journey yourself. Perhaps what remains is simply this: the peace you are building, however slowly, however imperfectly, was never meant to become a weapon against anyone else. It exists because you are worthy of living in it. Whether the person who hurt you ever recognizes that changes nothing. You do not need to count how many sleepless nights they have had to know your own nights are becoming lighter. You do not have to wait for an apology before giving yourself permission to move forward. Perhaps all you truly need is to keep building your own wall, one brick, one day, without climbing down simply to answer someone who no longer belongs inside your life. I know that after this message ends, there may still be moments when you feel tempted to check what they're doing, what they're thinking, how they're living. That does not mean you have failed. It simply means you are human. Old emotional ties rarely disappear overnight, but every time you choose not to look, every time you return your attention to your own life instead of searching through theirs, you quietly place another brick into the wall that protects your peace. Chosen one, remember this: healing is never a straight line. Some days you will feel completely free. Other days, one small reminder will seem to bring everything rushing back. Both kinds of days belong to the journey. Neither one means you are failing. What matters is not whether thoughts of them ever return. What matters is that those thoughts no longer decide who you are, or what your future is worth. If these reflections have spoken to your own journey, perhaps one day you'll return to them. Maybe on another quiet evening, when old waves begin to rise again, and you simply need to remember that the lake within you is still learning how to become calm, one gentle moment at a time. Before we part, I want to leave you with one final thought. A lake never needs to prove to yesterday's storm that it has recovered. It simply becomes a little calmer, day by day. Chosen one, even if your mind grows restless again tonight, I hope you'll carry this truth with you. You do not need their regret in order to deserve your peace. The stillness returning to your heart is already real, already strong, even if no one else in the world ever sees it.